No, not yet.
Now, for a second, please. I just can't get that. No, I got the number here. You got it.
Okay, we are now live streaming.
Okay, we are live. It's 4:01 and I'm going to call this meeting to order. And our first item of business is approval of the agenda. I have a motion moved by Bill McDonald and second by Tom Bowie that the agenda for the council meeting held March 22nd, 2022 be approved as, are there any amendments?
Yes, there are. There are two amendments, and both of them are add-ons on number 16 closed session. One is dealing with personal matters, and the other is proposed or pending acquisition of land. That's all I have.
Okay, so approved as amended. All those in favor? Motion carried. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest in general nature thereof of any item on tonight's agenda by any member of council? Seeing nothing, no hands, no back in the minutes. I have a motion moved by Tom Dewey and seconded by Sherry Vaughn that the minutes of the special council meeting held March 8th, 2022, and the regular council meeting held March 8th, 2022 be approved as presented. Any discussion? It is the same dates for both of those.
Yes, it's on the same.
All those in favor? Here. Mayor's remarks, just a few remarks. One is welcome back to our in-person after 2 long years. I agree we got out of here early when we came back to this beautiful hall, but certainly is nice to have turned the corner to be back, and the fact that we kept each other healthy for the past 2 years by doing work through Zoom. It wasn't always the easiest. Internet didn't always cooperate with all of us, but we got through it. And I think we actually got a better audience by doing Zoom because now we're recording all of our meetings. So with all the bad things, there's often some good things. And I think that was one of the things that came out of the pandemic. Also, on your table tonight, you have the Tay Valley 2021 Tay Watershed, Critical Watershed annual report. Since we haven't been meeting as stuff comes in. Run by Fred Dean, and it's called So You Want to Run for Council. And I think this is the same course that he did 4 years ago. And it's for the townships of Central, North, South, and the islands. So it's bringing all the people who want to run for council to that meeting. So if you're going to run again, or if you know people that are running for the first time, we'll put this on our website. Yes. So that people can come. There's always something to be learned. So it's a good session.
Sam, sorry to interrupt. We're having audio problems on the feed. They're saying they can't hear us. Do you mind just pausing for a minute while we try to figure out why we don't have audio?
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Don't ask me to repeat it all. Might say something totally
One thing I can keep up with
I was changing speakers. Presentation right on Tuesday. Paramedics that were coming together at the county doing job sharing, and it was being televised to go to Sweden, I believe is where they were from. And I did this wheel. I don't write stuff, so I have to say something again. I think it's sort of just several times.
Are you guys in media tonight, or whether?
Okay, some practice.
Be careful what you say.
You want us to keep talking to see if you can hear us
Hey,
now?
Tom?
So.
Oh, sorry, we might get it right this time.
You want to adjust that?
Yes.
Okay.
Cindy, it's Sonia. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes?
Okay, great, thanks. I've switched to using earbuds, which is much better. So I can hear most of what's going on, but there is quite a bit of an echo. So just later on, if there are questions, we might just have to have somebody, move a bit closer to the mics or whatnot. But I think we're okay now.
Okay, perfect. That's great. We will proceed then on the basis that you can hear us, and we'll try to speak slowly to avoid any echoey issues.
Okay. I just got a text from Cindy Kelsey that she's having trouble getting into the meeting, but may have to call in. Okay. All right, so we are at deferred items. There are no deferred items. All right, so we move right into staff reports. And our first report is Public Works. And I have a motion to by Bill McDonald, and seconded by Sherry Brown. The council received the Public Works activity report as prepared by the work manager dated March 20th for information.
Can you mute your microphone, please?
Any questions or comments for Tyson on this report? Spring has arrived, Tyson. The light is with us. The wind's going to dry it all up. No questions or comments? Okay. All those in favor of the report? That was too easy. All right, fire and emergency services. Motion by Sherry Tom, seconded by Tom Cooley. The council received the CFFR activity report as prepared by the manager of emergency services / fire chief dated March 22nd, 2022 for information. Any questions or comments on Chris's report? Bill?
Madam Mayor, Chris, when you're reviewing these reports, all stations, you got these little graphs. Is there any opportunity to make those a little bigger? Because those of us that are over 29, yes, I might be hard to see those.
31, right?
Yes.
For sure, no, we can do that. We are, our
Turn your microphones on, please, folks. Please.
Okay, stay back here. So we are getting a new records management system in place, and we will have a better statistical graph. So I apologize for this. I sort of inherited this when I came to.
The colors are nice.
Yeah.
One of the things it does show us is that we spend a lot of our time doing medical calls, huge. I didn't notice the breakdown of the medical calls this time, which I don't remember seeing those before, of the types of medical calls.
So in our tiered response with EMS is going to be reviewed as well, our contracts, so that when chief sends it on the credit report.
Okay, anything else for Chris? If not, all those in favor of the motion? Carried. Finance and Treasury, Michael. We have a motion moved by Sherry Wan and seconded by Bill McDonald. The council approved the check distribution reports totaling $935,515.44 as prepared by the treasurer. Any questions or comments on the payment of the bills? All those in favor? Carried. Next is the apportionment of taxes. Moved by Tom Dewey, seconded by Bill McDonald, that council approved the following apportionments of assessment as recommended by impact for 2021 and 2022 as applicable for the following roll numbers. And there are a number of those there. Any questions or comments on any of those? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Council remuneration report moved by Bill McDonald and seconded by Tom Dewey. That council received the 2021 council committee remuneration and expenses as prepared by the treasurer for information purposes only. Michael?
If I may make a comment, Madam Mayor, thank you. Just apologize to Councilor Gowdy for not putting the deputy mayor on your title on that line. The numbers were there, just not the title. Thank you.
Bill?
For your Madam Mayor, to Michael, the expense allowance, does that include a taxable amount on our annual income statement?
And through you, Mayor, Councilor McDonald, you're talking about the $100 that we get for office supplies and whatnot, then yes, that goes in and it's taxable.
So that's been included in our T4 slip.
Correct.
Yep.
You know what?
Okay, if there are no other questions, all those in favor? Carried. Great. Moved by Sherry Wine, seconded by Bill McDonald, that the Council of the Township of Central Frontenac accept and approve the 2022 excluded expenses report as required by the Ontario Regulation 284/09. Questions or comments? Do you want to speak to this briefly, Michael?
I don't need to, but I will, Madam Mayor. Just to maybe clarify, because I have to make my mind concentrate on this one as well. But ultimately, if we don't, in PSAB, you wouldn't count transfers to and from reserves as revenue or expenses. And we're not required to budget for amortization or the post-employment benefits or landfill. So if we were required to budget for those, we would be budgeting for a $4 million deficit. Because we both pulled 600 more out of reserves than we did last year, which should be offset by the 2021 surplus. Still, if we had to budget for it, which we're not allowed to budget for a deficit, that would be our deficit for the year.
And that's just to bring home what the actual costs of these waste systems are.
If you're budgeting from a accounting perspective versus a cash combination accounting perspective or accrual basis.
Okay.
Great, Glenn.
Questions? Britt?
Just one quick question, Michael. Is there any impact with regard to how we're treated by the province with any sort of top-up grants? Do they take this sort of thing into account when they're making those decisions?
Maybe a typical lawyer answer, yes and no. Yes, in terms of our debt. Yes, in terms of our financial position, of our assets and where everything is. So they would take every factor into account. And for our smaller rural perspective, we get a benefit from that as well. And I truly think that the amount of debt that we have is looked at somewhat favorably as well, unfortunately.
Maybe they would look at it as far as to say, we should probably take back the roads we gave those people. That would be nice. Anyway, yes, just an aside. All right, all those in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Once they give things, they don't take them back. All right. We have a motion moved by Tom Dewey and seconded by Sherry Wan that Council for the Township of Central Frontenac approve the vendor of record list as recommended by the treasurer. This is something we do every year.
Yes, ma'am.
Questions or comments on the list? Tom?
Thank you, Your Worship. You and Michael. Michael, I probably asked this dumb question before, but we first this list every 3 years. So if a vendor's been inactive for 3 years, do we delete it from our list?
Through your worship, Councilor Dewey, it's actually done on an annual basis. Whenever we prepare this, it goes, oh, fudge, we haven't used them in a while. Okay, Amy, get rid of that, get rid of that. There's refinements that we do each year just to try and keep it as accurate as possible. I also don't want to remove a vendor that department may need to use, so I normally check with them as well if I have time.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay. No other questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried. This is Finance and Treasury night. Moved by Bill McDonald, seconded by Tom Dewey, that Council for the Township of Central Frontenac adopt the 2022 budget as presented by the treasurer with the recommendation to raise the municipal levy of $9,328,225. Michael?
Are there any questions from council before we pass it?
Pass the ball.
Thank you.
One thing. What are we talking about with the roof?
That's up to you if we talk about that now or bring back a separate report later.
We talked about the roof at the fire hall briefly during budget discussions.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. So this has been a bit of a challenge for the insurance piece. Emailing back and forth at least 3 to 4 times a week to get information from the contractor. So what the adjuster has done is obviously hired this contractor. Snow was an issue, so when we had the mild spell, I got on them again to come and look at it. So the roofer did show up. I was a little concerned, but he did go back and give an estimate to the contractor. I've not seen that, but I spoke to the adjuster today, and he says that they are including the removal of the solar panels to do the work. So that was a good thing, because it's about a $30,000 venture to move those off. I think when we do move them off the roof, that we're going to put them at the back of the fire hall, the council wants to keep them there. We have to find out the lifespan of the panels to see if it's worth our while to do that. But I'll provide a report, obviously, to council when I get more information. I just want to give you an update on it because it's been going on since I came here. So just an FYI. So far it's we're at the 30,000 mark. If we disposed of the panels completely, it's a $1,200 bill. Then we're done. So there's the inverter plus the moving of the 30,000 panels. Okay. Inverters are quite expensive as well.
But at this point, the insurance will cover it.
That's what I've been told. They're not putting that in writing to me yet, so I'm hoping that the adjuster has that for me later this week.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions or comments from council? I guess the question is, if the insurance doesn't cover it, do we want to pay the 30,000 to keep the panels and have them installed on the ground?
I guess that'll be what we would have to decide. I'll see what the lifespan of the panels are as well, because I imagine if I purchase them today, it would be quite expensive.
So maybe we could reserve that decision until we find out about the panels.
Because your revenue is about 8,500 a year.
Approximately, yes.
Yes.
So,
And they were installed like 12 years ago, I believe. Loan started in 2011.
so they probably got another 12 years. Not
Okay,
sure.
so bring it back when you have more information.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So the question before us is to approve the budget at $9,328,225. Nikki.
Through you, Madam Mayor, thank you. Can I just have a vote?
Before we vote,
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sorry, thank you.
Okay, all right. Nikki, what's your vote?
No.
Okay, Sherry. Oh, she's gone. We'll come back to Sherry. Philip. Brent.
Yes.
Tom.
Yes.
Victor.
Yes.
Fran, yes. Cindy Kelsey.
No.
Okay, Bill McDonald.
Yes.
And we'll wait for Sherry just for a sec. For Sherry. Sherry, we're having a recorded vote on the motion to pass the budget. And we're waiting for your vote on the budget.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. Yes or no to pass the budget, $9,328,225. Yes, okay. 2 noes and 7 yeses. Motion's carried. Very good. All right. We have, that's it for finance.
that's
We're
it.
now at administration. Okay, and this is an update on committee of adjustment procedural bylaws. Moved by Tom Dewey, seconded by Sherry Wan. Whereas Central Frontenac has lifted its state of emergency relating to the pandemic and wishes to resume in-person meetings for committee of adjustment while offering the virtual participation option for members and the public to attend. And whereas the amendment to the Committee of Adjustment procedural bylaw done in 2020 only provided for electronic virtual meetings during a state of emergency and must be updated to continue to allow virtual/electronic participation when not in a state of emergency. Now therefore be it resolved that council receive this report and draft bylaw for information and consider passing said bylaw later in the meeting so that we can continue to offer electronic participation in addition to in-person meetings. Discussion. There were some questions in that background that need to be answered as well by us for future considerations or process stuff. So does anybody have that up? Victor, do you want to start?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of points for clarification. In the last page of the bylaw, section B says that electronic participation would be within 24 hours in advance. But earlier in the detail section, section 12A says 3 hours. So that just needs to be to make it match.
Which is the preference? 3 hours or 12? What should we be consistent with?
Now, what was it again?
Oh, so, okay, so in part 4, quorum, 12A says that participants have to give 3 hours notice if they're going to phone in or going by Zoom. Later on in the bylaw, it says 24 hours. I would, like, my preference would be the shorter amount because you might not know that you're going to feel sick.
That's right.
24 hours ahead.
Or it could be a storm.
Or it could be a
your
storm.
car won't start.
So that, and it just has to match.
Yes.
So in that situation, then it would just be a matter of changing that paragraph sub B from 24 to 3. That makes sense.
Yes.
Okay.
And the other question is, what is our expectation for members to attend in person? Do we offer convenience of having the option to make it easier to attend, or do we limit the scope such that it's a method of last resort?
And by members, I'm assuming you're talking about the committee members.
Yes.
And we're not talking about other participants.
No, that comes next. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, I think it should be limited. So and I believe there is a section where it talks about some of the reasons, illness, poor weather. Yeah, so just having it as a convenience, so I don't feel like driving to Charlotte Lake. Not good.
Well, and I think as our procedural bylaw for council meetings, this could mirror that, where we have an obligation to be at these meetings and not to stay home and not be involved doing the job we're hired to do, right? So I think it's by exception, not the rule, that we can stay home and Zoom in. Brent?
Yeah, I want to speak in favor of that. The one thing that concerns me particularly with Committee of Adjustment is we meet once a month and there are people there waiting on approvals. And if we don't have quorum, and we find out at the very last minute that we don't have enough people and we have to kick it forward a month or so, these are people that are waiting to get a definite answer from us in order to be able to hire contractors and do various things. And I do agree that it should be a last resort only if necessary, and certainly provides those in section 12A outlining the circumstances under which a person can use that option. Sparingly, I hope, but I think it's good that we itemize the reasons where this would be something that was acceptable as opposed to just a convenient way of doing things.
So if I could, through you, Madam Mayor, in that section for quorum on 12A, the way it words right now, every effort shall be made to attend in person. So that kind of at least indicates that there is that expectation. However, so there's medical reasons, poor road conditions, scheduling conflicts, where the member otherwise would not be able to attend due to another meeting or commitment relating to municipal or council duties, declaration of a state of emergency, absence from the area due to work, vacation, or bereavement leave. So looking for feedback as to whether that's too scoped or whether we need to add things or how you might want to adjust that list.
I think it's a pretty good list.
I think that's,
Yeah.
Could we put something in at the discretion of the chair?
Chair.
So in case something happens that we didn't anticipate.
I think if it happens, then we go back and revisit the bylaw.
Okay, then let's say something happens. Let's say that something happens, and it doesn't fall within these 5 bullet points, and the person tries to attend but can't. Is that person considered part of quorum or not?
They could end up in an accident.
Yeah.
For one.
So they don't make the meeting.
Well, I'm not thinking that. I'm thinking that something outside these 5 bullet points, but the person is still able to attend by Zoom. Do you count that person towards quorum?
Yes,
I think they have.
yes. Here's a suggestion. What if we say including but not limited to?
Yeah, that would make,
Yes.
yeah.
So
Is it a bit flexible? Maybe too flexible, but at least that gives you sort of the scope of what we're anticipating, but there could be other.
Well, and I think if we find that it's being abused, then we take it out altogether. So that you have to be here.
Sure.
Like, oh, Bill, go ahead.
Madam Mayor, one of the things, and I think this is a comment to everyone, is the reason that we have a committee of the whole as our committee of adjustment is that we have 9 people and a quorum is 3. So many of the other municipalities actually appoint outside attendees on the committee of adjustment. And we've always felt that they weren't accountable to the public as you as an elected individual is. So I think we're trying to jump creeks that aren't there yet. So what I would suggest is we go with this and see how it works out. That's my opinion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. The other question is, do we expect this, do we expect the same for staff, including planning staff from the county? If so, what are the expectations? Ask for 1 person to attend and the rest virtual, and starting at 4 instead of 6, keeping in mind additional staff time required to set up and take down. I think, especially in winter time, for 3 staff, like the county staff, we've had 3 staff attending all of our committee of adjustment meetings. If 1 staff is working here that day and attends that meeting that evening, which usually is what happens, then the other staff can come in virtually if they're needed. That makes sense. Yeah, and I think the reason our meetings were at 6 o'clock is so that people who were coming before us didn't have to leave work in order to come. But if they could come in virtually from Toronto, Ottawa, Oshawa, wherever they lived, would that give them more freedom to move it to 4 instead of 6, which is better for our staff and better for the county staff?
Right.
What do you think of that? Bill?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to that issue, I think if somebody actually has an article before the committee of adjustment, it wouldn't matter when you're actually receiving that information and voting on it. I think the onus would be on them to attend in some format. So from my perspective, being at 4 o'clock, it means that we're not paying staff to be here at 6. And staff in the county can attend. In my opinion, if we had for the last, 3-4 years, Jenny's been here in person, and if there's further information that's required, they can come in virtually. But as far as accommodating the public and those that have an application before us, I don't think the time will make any difference. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Would council be acceptable to moving it to 4 o'clock to try it? Because I know 6 o'clock for staff, by the time they set up, the meeting goes on sometimes till 7:30, 8 o'clock, and then they have to take down and then come back to work again the next day.
And one thing that might help as well, the way that it's worded in the original procedural bylaw, and I did not amend it in this amendment, is basically the time and location is at the call of the chair of a committee of adjustment. So in terms of, I don't think council necessarily needs to fix the time in this amending bylaw moving forward. It can be at the call of the chair. It's just sort of as a direction to staff as to when you would prefer to hold that. So we can keep it, like if we want to try keeping it at 4 for now and see how it goes. And then it's not something we'll need to change the bylaw for if we decide to change the time to later if we get people not able to attend.
People are okay with the 4? We've been doing that for the last couple of years, so keep going. Okay, good. So, yes, go ahead, Tom.
Thank you. My question on this amendment, maybe I missed, we were talking 24 hours ahead and I believe that was council. And then now we're talking about 3 hour, but on the committee of adjustment, we're saying 12-hour prior to start of the meeting. I really don't think 12 hours notice would be sufficient. Should we not make that 24 hours? Because that would give all the residents that are going to be coming or being part of that meeting, would give them little notice. I think we should probably move that to 24 hours notice. It says 12 on this amendment, Cindy.
And through you, Madam Mayor, that's an excellent point, and I struggled with that, whether to do 24/12. The reason I picked 12, and it was arbitrary on my part, was because I was thinking if there's, thinking that the most obvious case where that might occur is during a snowstorm or some kind of weather event, and I just didn't know if 24 hours in advance, it would be too hard to call it, and whether we should wait 12, but open to suggestions.
And this is to not have the meeting,
To switch to a completely virtual instead of doing the hybrid.
Right, and I think with the way that we're able to predict the weather now, I think with the technology we have, we're doing a pretty good job of, making it. So I really think we should move that to 24 hours to announce to the public that we're going to be having an electronic meeting. I think 12 is cutting it short. If you think about it, we have the meeting at 4 o'clock. So when you're going to notify them at 4 in the morning or something, I just don't think 12 hours makes sense. I think it needs to be 24. That's my suggestion.
We didn't find a 7 for the first time.
let's try 24, see how it works. If it's not working well, we can change it again.
Yeah, I think
Okay, good
that's
stuff. So the last one was establishing further rules for public participation, whether the video is on or off and whether to allow screen sharing, etc. I think whatever works best. Okay. So far, we've had them leave their video off until they were going to speak, and then they would put it on. And screen sharing is probably at the chair's decision. Usually they send it to you to share anyway, Cindy, right? Or you should give them permission.
To date, I don't think we've only had screen sharing with planners. We haven't allowed anyone from the public or anything to screen share. The one place that did come up, and it wasn't committee of adjustments, was the public meeting for the rezoning application at Silver Lake. Whether or not to allow the applicant to screen share, we came up with it then. So it's something that we need to address in both procedural bylaws at some point, but we can think about that a little bit more.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we've answered those questions. And Victor?
Yeah, I just have one more question. Again, on the final page of the draft bylaw, section C states, where a state of emergency has been declared, electronic participation shall count towards quorum. But I think what we're trying to say here as well is it doesn't have to be a state of emergency.
Yes, you're right. And I wonder if we can just take that out altogether.
Yes.
Yeah, so
I
just,
think that was a carryover from the original bylaw, and I didn't think to take that out, so I really think we could just take.
I just take that phrase out and just say electronic participation shall count towards quorum.
Yeah, and I think we've already said that in part 4. In such cases, virtual attendance shall be considered sufficient to count towards quorum. So I think
Good.
we will just let it.
Give me a match.
Okay, good. Good to go over, catch those things. All right, all those in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you, Cindy. Okay. We we have a motion moved by Philip Smith and seconded by Victor Hayes, that the report entitled Provincial Changes to the Planning Act through Bill 13 and Bill 276, prepared by Sonia Bolton, Manager of Community Planning, be received for information. And Sonia is zooming in to answer any questions that we might have or any comments.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. Thanks very much for having me. I'm glad to see the hybrid model is working out relatively well. I don't have a formal presentation prepared. It is just a short information report. I did my best to try and be succinct and clear because sometimes provincial legislation is a little bit wordy, but I am happy to take questions if there are any.
Okay, we did go through it, lots of information. Any questions or comments from anyone? Brent, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Sonia. I'm looking at the write-up with regard specifically to Bill 13, and there was some mention about creating a delegated authority. And I was just wondering if you could speak more at length on it. Now, I know that this is still under review, but I was wondering if you could tell me how that would potentially interact with the Committee of Adjustment, whether it be a facet of it or a complement to it.
Sure, through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, so the way that delegated authority can work is that the specific change through Bill 13 was to allow for delegated authority with respect to some bylaw changes, but there is already permissions to allow for delegated authority for some other types of approvals. Common ones that are normally dealt with through, say, the Committee of Adjustment process would be things such as consents for lot additions or for easements, applications that are usually quite straightforward and usually don't have a lot of, if any, public input to them, with the idea being that if there isn't any opposition to the application, it's something that could be delegated to staff, and therefore it's one less one less application on the committee's docket. Now, there are numerous ways you could do it. In my past life, at my previous employment, the way that it worked is that for the consents for lot additions and for easements, in order for it to be delegated authority to staff, there's no requirement immediately for a planning, for a public meeting or an actual hearing, but you do have to give public notice. So 14 days notice would be given. That would be mailed out. Signage would go on the property, just as it currently does. But instead of giving the date of a meeting, it would give a date 14 days after the mailing of the notice. And if no comments or questions had been raised by the public, then the application would proceed to be delegated authority to staff. If somebody raised a question or had a concern and staff were able to work with the applicant and the member of the public to resolve it, again, it would be delegated authority to staff. If for some reason the opposition could not be resolved, then it would be scheduled as a meeting before the Committee of Adjustment. So it still would come back to the committee if there were any objections, but for the most part, often easements and lot additions are relatively straightforward. So those are two common ones that are delegated authority. Some other things are site plan control is often delegated authority for certain types of site plan control, but I think right now, I don't think the township has any delegated authority. So I was thinking that things like the consents for the lot additions and easements might be something to consider. It's certainly something I'm looking at bringing forward, probably in a separate report at a later date. I don't know if it'll be before or after the municipal election. We'll have to see. But I think given the number of applications that your Committee of Adjustment is starting to see or has seen over the last couple of years, if there's an opportunity to reduce the load on those agendas by delegating the authority for some of the more simpler applications to staff, that is something that could be done. And to be clear, it would be delegated authority to township staff. So county planning staff would still provide advice, but you would have to appoint somebody at the township level, be it your clerk, your deputy clerk, to be the person who has the final sign-off authority.
Right. Okay, it's definitely something we'll be discussing down the road. Okay. Okay, anything else on those two bills? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you, Sonia.
Great, thank you.
Right, we are at committee reports. Moved by Victor Hayes, seconded by Philip Smith, that council received the minutes from the Septic Implementation Committee meeting held November the 29th, 2021 for information. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Philip Smith, seconded by Victor Hayes, that council received the minutes from the Central Frontenac Trails Revitalization Committee meeting held November 22nd, 2021 for information. Any discussion? Trails are looking great, by the way. A little snowy and muddy right now, but all those in favor? Carried. And moved by Victor Hayes and seconded by Philip Smith, the council received the minutes from the CPAC meeting held December 21st, 2021 for information. All those in favor? Carried. Moved by Brent Cameron, seconded by Nikki Gowdy, that council received for information the following correspondence, and it's 1 to 9. Any questions or comments on any of those? All those in favor? Carried. And moved by Brent Cameron, seconded by Nikki Gowdy, whereas a request has been received to support the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario by advertising in their Tiny Hearts magazine, and whereas the township falls within the catchment area for this hospital and recognizes the important role it plays in the health of our youngest residents. Now therefore be it resolved that staff be directed to proceed with placing an ad in the Tiny Hearts magazine for a cost of $295 plus HST. This is something we've done before.
Yes.
Brett, go ahead.
I'd like to speak in favor of it. I'm the parent of a child who received life-saving surgery at CHEO many years ago. And, you know, we don't live that far away from some family whose child had the exact same surgery with the exact same surgeon at CHEO. A lot of people have had their children treated there. Now they're into the second generation. I can't speak highly enough about the professionalism and the fact that people in this community have been touched by it. So it's a wonderful thing to be able to support them as they support a lot of families in need.
For sure. Bill?
Likewise, I support the motion. Bad experience in our family to take advantage of the services that were offered there, so I fully support this motion.
Okay, all those in favor? Carried unanimously. Tiny Hearts. All right, we are now going to go into a public meeting. And as such, I have some procedures to talk about. The Council of the Township of Central Frontenac is conducting a public meeting under the Planning Act. This meeting is with respect to application ZB0222 Hinchinbrook, Radisac, and Davidson for the rezoning of part of Lot 6, Concession 1, Geographic Township of Hinchinbrook, 1336 40-foot road from a rural zone to a waterfront residential zone to ensure that the conditions of consent for the two waterfront lots. I will now ask the deputy clerk to advise the method by which notice of the meeting was given and confirmation as to the date that notice was given. Cindy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We did put an ad in the newspaper on February 24th. Agencies were notified February 23rd with a notice on our website as well on February 23rd. And mail outs to the adjoining 120 meter property owners was February 25th.
Okay, thank you. Any person who wished to receive a copy of the minutes of the public meeting, a copy of the report or notice of the passage should indicate their full name, address, postal code, and contact numbers to Cindy Deckman, Deputy Clerk, at the contact information provided in the report. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Central Frontenac before the proposed amendment being approved or adopted, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the Township of Central Frontenac to the Ontario Land Tribunal and may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Lands Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. The procedure for the public meeting will be as follows. The community planner will be asked to explain the purpose of the public meeting and presenting the planning report. The applicants will then be provided an opportunity to discuss the proposal. I will then inquire if there are any other persons present who wish to make oral or written submissions on the proposed proposal. If so, you should announce your name and state whether you support or oppose the proposal. Should there be any other persons wishing to make comments or to ask questions about the proposal, they will be given an opportunity to address council. The applicant will also be given an opportunity to respond to issues arising from the public comments. Please be aware that all persons wishing to address the issues should direct their comments and questions through the chair. I would also note that personal information collected as a result of this public meeting is collected under the authority of the Municipal Act, the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection and Privacy Act, the Planning Act, and all other relevant legislation, and will be used to assist in making a decision on this matter. All personal information is defined by MFIPA, including but not limited to names, addresses, opinions, and comments collected will be made available for public disclosure to members of the public at the meeting through requests and through the website of the Corporation of the Township of Central Frontenac. Questions regarding the collection, use, and disclosure of this personal information may be directed to the clerk. I will now ask Cindy Diekman to advise how members of the public can participate in the meeting.
And I think we just have the applicant that has joined the meeting virtually. So when it gets to the point, if you need to speak or wish to say anything, I'll get you to use the raise hand feature and I can move you over. Thank you.
And we should probably note that there's no members of the public in the meeting with us today.
Yes, that's correct. So Dimitri, I think I enabled screen sharing.
Yes, you did. Hi, Madam Mayor, members of council. Just for the benefit of all the members in attendance today, my name is Dimitri and I'm a planner with the County of Frontenac. I have a quick presentation that I'd like to share with you. So I'm just going to put it up on my screen. Since this is new, can you please just confirm that you do see a slide on the screen?
Yes, we do.
Excellent, thank you. So zoning application ZB0222 proposes to rezone approximately 9.7 hectares or 24 acres of land from rural to waterfront residential. The parcel to be rezoned is located on the southern limit of the property located at 1336 40-foot road, having a legal description of Part Lot 6 Concession 1 in the geographic township of Hinchinbrook. So the reason this application is before you today is because the Committee of Adjustment approved the creation of 2 waterfront residential properties on December 12, 2021. One of the conditions associated with both of the approved consent applications was the requirement for the applicant to rezone the proposed severed lands from rural to waterfront residential before a certificate of official could be signed and the lots could be legally created. There are 2 reasons why the consent applications were required rezoning. The first reason is that the 2 lots are proposed to be accessed by a new private lane. The township zoning bylaw only allows for the creation of new lots that have access via a private lane on properties that are zoned either limited service rural, LSR for short, or waterfront residential, or RW. The second reason is because both of these properties are proposed to be located on the waterfront of an existing unnamed water body. The waterfront area policies of the township official plan states that any lands located roughly within 150 meters or 490 feet of a water body are considered to be in the waterfront area. Therefore, the waterfront area policies apply. The intent of the waterfront area policies and the zoning provisions are to ensure that development that's permitted as of right and without requiring planning approvals in the waterfront area minimizes the impact on water bodies within the township. The tool that implements these waterfront area policies is the township zoning bylaw. So generally speaking, the uses that are permitted within the waterfront residential zone as of right are much more restrictive than those in the rural zone. Planning staff are of the opinion that since the two proposed lots are located on the waterfront of a water body, and since they're accessed by a private lane, that the most appropriate zoning provision for them is, of course, waterfront residential. In terms of technical comments on the application, we didn't receive anything from any of the circulated agencies related to this rezoning, and no comments were received from the public. It should be noted, however, that both the Township of South Frontenac and Quinte Conservation Authority provided comments on the two approved consent applications back in December. At that time, both agencies did not identify any concerns associated with the creation of the two lots and did recommend approval. All this considered, planning staff are of the opinion that the rezoning of the parcel from rural to waterfront residential is appropriate, and it's the best way to proactively ensure that future development does not have a negative impact on the quality and the aesthetic character associated with the unnamed water body. Overall, planning staff are of the opinion that this rezoning is desirable and consistent with the provincial policy statement, that it conforms to the county and township official plan, and that once rezoned, it will comply with the purpose and intent of the township zoning bylaw. As such, planning staff are recommending that councils hear comments from the public, and if no new information comes up that cannot be resolved at this meeting, approve this application. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. So we don't have any member of the public to ask any questions.
I'll just ask that if the applicant wishes to speak, you can use the raise hand feature now.
No.
No, I guess we're good.
Does Cindy have her hand raised?
No, that's my cursor, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, big so I can see it. Okay, does any member of council have any questions? Okay, seeing none. Good. I guess that wraps it up. We have no questions or comments. So the public meeting is now concluded. I would remind any persons wishing to receive additional information to provide their full name, address, and postal code and contact number to Cindy, and the email and address and phone number in the report. Okay. So I have a motion, and the motion is moved by Nikki Gowdy, seconded by Brent Cameron. The council received public comments of the public meeting scheduled for March 22, 2022, and that the application for zoning bylaw amendment, file number ZB0222 Radicek and Davidson for the 9.7 hectare 24-acre parcel of land located at Part Lot 6, Concession 1, Geographic Township of Hinchinbrook, be approved, and the zoning bylaw 2011-52 of the Township of Central Frontenac as amended be further amended as per attachment 2, draft bylaw and schedule A to amend zoning bylaw number 2011-52, and that council determines that in accordance with section 3417 of the Planning Act, no further notice is required prior to the passage of the bylaw, and that the amending bylaw be presented to council for all 3 readings. Any comments or questions? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, that's done. Now we have some bylaws. Moved by Philip Smith, I believe.
Yes, it is.
And seconded by Brent Cameron. Remember, I've been writing your names and I knew exactly what they were. That bylaw 2022-18 being a bylaw to adopt the estimates for the sums required during the year 2022 for the purposes of the Township of Central Frontenac, and to set the appropriate tax rates be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 22nd day of March 2022. All those in favor? Motion's carried. moved by Brent Cameron, seconded by Nikki Gowdy, that bylaw 2022-19, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 209-314, being a bylaw to establish a procedure for the Committee of Adjustment for the Township of Central Frontenac, and to repeal bylaw 2020-26, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 22nd day of March 2022 with those amendments we talked about. Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Motion moved by Nikki Gowdy and seconded by Brent Cameron, that bylaw 2022-20, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 2011-52 as amended, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 22nd day of March 2022. All those in favor? Carried. Okay. Agenda. Okay, is there any notice of motion?
No, none, Mayor, Madam Mayor.
Any giving of notices of motion?
No,
Any new or other business?
no, there is not.
Okay, we have a motion moved by Brent Cameron, seconded by Nikki Gowdy, that council move into closed session pursuant to section 239(2) to discuss advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, section 239(2)(f). B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, section 239(2)(a). And C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, section 239(2)(c). All those in favor? Carried.
2-minute break.
Okay, sure, let's have a 2-minute break if you want to grab a coffee or something.
Did anybody have a problem here signing?
Yes.
I did.
Yes. Yeah.
But she was kind of mumbled. Now,
She spoke too quickly.
yeah, I didn't know why, she wasn't too bad, but she got some hardly hear a word she said.
Can you just hold a second until I just going to stop the live stream here?
Oh, I just wondered if I was going to work. Okay, sounds bad. Is that something said you can clean up here? Is that our, is this speaker here, or is it something in there?
I think it's our sister speakers.
No, I just.